Given the recent events in New York City and around the country, we thought it was a good idea to make a short video on an item that you can carry in your pocket and can potentially save your life or the life of another in an emergency. The Combat Application Tourniquet, or CAT. Stick around, let's get into it.
All right, thank you for joining us. Today we're going to be teaching you a potentially life-saving skill for either yourself or someone else. And we brought an expert in to teach you about the use of tourniquets. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Morty.
Hi everybody, my name is Morty Lax. I've been a paramedic in New York City for about 25 years or so. I've been an educator for just over 20. I'm a state certified EMS instructor. I've been teaching EMTs, paramedics, and I sit on New York City's Regional EMS Council, where I chair the Training and Education Committee. Importance of tourniquets. So you may be in a situation in your private lives or when you are outdoorsing where you encounter a situation where you might need to control bleeding. Now, most bleeding can be controlled with a simple bandage and direct pressure, but there are times when you're going to have more severe bleeding. And to recognize that more severe bleeding, you're going to look for two things. One is blood literally pouring out, or you might see it spurting. Those are the different types of bleeds that you would encounter that would be too difficult to stop typically with a regular bandage. So what you're going to want to use in one of those cases is a tourniquet. This particular tourniquet over here is the CAT 7. All right, so this is the Combat Application Tourniquet. So this is one of the most common devices, commercially available devices that you will see used in general. It is very popular among first responders across the spectrum, whether it be police, EMS, and whatnot. So they're readily available, and if you don't have one and somebody else has one, training on this particular device will make it very easy for you to use somebody else's in case you encounter it. So what makes this device so easy to use is that you can apply it to yourself in a one-handed type of situation, should it be needed, or you can apply it to somebody else. In a one-handed situation, over here we just put this here for simplicity, but typically you would have it sitting in some sort of case. There are hard cases and there are soft cases. This particular soft case is one example, and you would be able to pull this out with one hand, assuming that you have this clipped to a belt. So you pull it out with one hand, and you're going to have this little notch at the top, and that notch should enable you to be able to hold it and kind of yank it down, where you would be able to put, if it's your arm, assuming that it's your arm, apply it to yourself with just the use of one hand. And what you would do is very simply pull it, and you're going to then close the Velcro. You're going to twist this windlass. This is called a windlass. And you're going to twist that until you see the bleeding stop. Whoever you're applying it to, whether it's yourself or somebody else, is going to hurt. If you're applying this properly, it is definitely going to hurt. So if you're practicing this, don't practice more than 1 or 2 times with this particular device. Buy a second one so that you can use for practice, because you don't want to stretch the material over time. That can happen if you practice too many times. And don't really cut off your circulation when you're practicing. All right, once you're done, you're going to lock the windlass into place over here. You're going to cover that up with the remaining Velcro so that you don't have too many loose things hanging. You're going to take this patch over here, and with a pen or a Sharpie, you're going to write the time that the tourniquet was applied. That's going to be important for the trauma surgeons later. All right. This should be, again, applied only if needed and if you cannot control bleeding by other means. Once you do that, you never, ever, ever take them off. All right. These can only be taken off in a controlled environment by somebody properly trained to do so, which usually means in a hospital. All right. So,
Morty, can I jump in here with a question?
Please do.
All right. I see you have the tourniquet is staged up on your bicep.
Yeah.
So for people at home that are viewing this, can you just describe where the injury is or the bleed?
Okay, so I jumped ahead a little bit here and went directly to applying the device without discussing where the bleed is. So the bleed could be anywhere from the shoulder down. And what you want to do is you want to apply it. There are really 2 thoughts as to where you can put this, and 2 schools of thought. One is a way that's generally taught to military folks or tactical responders, and the other one is more for the layperson. I like to teach high and tight because you don't have to sit and estimate how high above the wound it is. Just put it as high as you possibly can. All right, and that should enable you to cut off any of the circulation to that area as you close this off.
Now, how do you know that you're cutting off circulation?
So what you want to see is the bleeding stop. If you've turned it to the point where bleeding stops, that's exactly what you want to stop. You don't want to go too far beyond that, but once you see the bleeding stop, you can stop. It wouldn't be a bad thing to check for a pulse if you know how to check for one. If you can check for a pulse, that's great. If you don't feel a pulse, that's not necessarily the end of the world, because if it was an arterial bleed, which typically would be spurting, you would not be feeling a pulse. You want to shut that down. You want to shut off that spigot.
Okay, so once you're turning the windlass until you notice the bleeding stopping, is that
That's
correct?
correct.
And it's at that point that you're going to stage the windlass?
That's right. So you're going to turn this until the bleeding stops. Bleeding stops, I'm going to lock the windlass in place. Continue to close off the rest of this. We don't want anything hanging anywhere that it could get caught on something. And then you're going to close over the top.
Excellent. And is that's the same for arms and legs?
Yeah, so this would be the same exact maneuver, whether you're doing it with one hand, two hands, arms, legs. There are places where you cannot apply these, and that's where things get a little bit trickier, and these are not going to help you. Right? So if it's higher up, closer to a joint, you're not going to be able to apply a tourniquet. Obviously, anywhere above the neck, you're not going to be able to apply a tourniquet. And on the torso as well. So on the torso, depending on where, there are different devices that if you're trained to use, you could potentially use. One of those would be this wound packing gauze, which you should be trained to use before you do so. And you can apply those in a junction, right, in a joint where that big blood vessel, that main artery or main vein, might feed that limb, and you won't be able to apply a tourniquet there. You can pack that wound there until you can control the bleeding.
All right, so that will be the subject of another video. This video, we're going to limit our conversation to the use specifically of the tourniquet, and in this case, it's the CAT 7?
This is the CAT 7.
CAT 7. Okay, I see you're folding it up now. Can you just describe what it is that you're doing?
So there are various ways to fold this. I just folded this right now in a makeshift way that will help it fit nicely into this package. Also happens to be that if I just yank this out of the package and go like this, I can apply it single-handed like I just did before. That's one way to do it. Now, the other way to do it is as follows. I actually like to keep this as open as possible. So if I need to get over a large limb on my own, I can do that. Okay? So what I like to do is actually, I don't know if you can see this on the video here, but there is some writing on the back of this. If you can see the writing on the back of this, it's kind of right around where I like to cap it off. So I will kind of close it off right there. Again, this is just one technique. There are many ways to do this. And then you're going to fold this in a way that will actually fit whatever carrier you're carrying. There is no exact science necessarily to it. You can. There are some techniques that will enable you to deploy it in different fashions, but closing it just like this will still fit into the package and will enable you to pull the red tab as you pull it out of the device, drop it, and now it's open quite a bit. So I can fit an arm, I can fit a leg. It's not a problem to get this over anything, and it's ready to go. And much easier to twist than when I first took it out of the pack, to pull tight than when I first took it out of the package. So as you can see, these are really incredibly easy to use. I highly recommend this particular device, like I said, because this is probably one of the most generically available ones that people carry out there.
All right, so Morty, you demonstrated how to deploy that on yourself. Can you also show the viewers how you would apply that to somebody else?
Sure. So to apply it to somebody else, you actually have the luxury, if I can call it that, of using both of your hands to apply it. Which, by the way, as I showed you before, you can open this to apply to a leg yourself. You could really just open this completely and just wrap it around your leg as well. So
before you do it, can I just point out one thing to everybody? So for people who've never seen a tourniquet before, all right, many times this will come staged. All right, sometimes it will come wrapped up like this, all right, and this tab will be covering, right? This is not the best way to deploy or to stage your tourniquet. Would you agree?
I agree, definitely.
All right, so it pays to take a minute to, after you take it out of its wrapping, you want to stage it yourself, all right? This is a critical piece of equipment being deployed at a critical point in time, and you want to waste the least amount of time possible. So when you get it and you open it up, the first thing you're going to do is loop it through, right? And then, you know, Morty already described how you're going to stage it, but you want the time loop to be open, the windlass to be staged inside, and you want it folded in a way that when it's deployed, you can just slip your arm through, and you're not first looking for the, I guess, the clasp or whatever it is to loop it through. All right, I apologize.
Yeah, no, please, thank you. So the truth of the matter is, I showed you one or maybe two ways to stage it. I've seen so many different ways to stage it, and I've seen different reasonings behind all of them. Find a way that you are most comfortable with, that you, when you practice on your own, are able to quickly and easily deploy it on yourself or somebody else. That's the key, is that it's quick and easy and ready for you to do it. But it must be staged, right? An ounce of preparation is going to go a long way. Okay, so applying to somebody else. You're going to open it all the way. You're going to, if it's an arm, you're going to go above the location of the hemorrhage, right? Again, high and tight. And if your folks have Velcro, go over the Velcro. Right, so high and tight. You're going to pull this snug, right? So you want to be able to barely get your fingers through it. And then you're going to go and begin turning the windlass. Now, many of you may ask, which direction do I turn the windlass in? Well, it will turn in either direction, and it will lock in either direction. So just turn it. Okay, so you're going to turn this, and then you're going to lock it into place. Okay, again, I'm not going to turn it more than this because this is a live individual who's not bleeding, whose arm I really don't want to add extra pain to. You're going to close this off. You're going to loop this over, and you're going to write your time down with your Sharpie or your pen or your marker. A leg would be very similar. Right, so with the leg, you could either open it all the way. If your victim is laying down, you can open it all the way, and then just pull this through from underneath, just like that. If the leg was on the floor, okay. Again, you might not want to aggravate anything that's going on there. We don't know what other injuries there are besides the bleeding. All right, so with that, you're going to go high and tight. Be careful when you get to the groin area. You don't want to inflict any damage to anything over there that is not damaged, anything vital. You're going to close that tight as well. You want to not be able to get more than 2 fingers in, and then you're going to close off your windlass. Once again, you're going to wrap that closed. Again, I'm not doing this for real here, so I'm not going all the way, and you're going to close that over. Now, you could have a situation where now he begins to bleed again, either because this failed or because maybe I just didn't do it tight enough, or we moved the victim and now it's changed. We're not going to manipulate this more than it's already been manipulated. In that case, we're going to take a makeshift device. That could be your shirt, that could be a pant leg, that could be anything. And what you're going to do is you're going to take that object along with something like a pen. So I'm going to close this, tie a knot. I'm just using this space over here for argument's sake. I'm going to tie a knot. We're going to take our pen, tie that into this knot. I like to do a surgical knot, which is just an extra twist. And I used a very slippery object here, but now I have my windlass. And I can keep turning this windlass until the bleeding stops. And once it does, all I have to do is now tie off the tie. Right? So you can tie this off whichever way you want. You could tie it to itself just as long as it ties around the knot, and it's not going to untie. It's not going to look pretty. It's not a commercially available device that was made for this specific purpose, but it's going to work. An alternative would be, I don't know about you guys when you're out there, if you're outdoorsing or whatever it is you're doing, I happen to like these ratcheting belts. These ratcheting belts are fantastic because I can get exactly to where I want to be before or after a meal, and it's going to fit me exactly how I want. Because it ratchets, it also is going to stay very, very tight. I can always use one of these. Very easy for me to take off. There's no windlass. It's actually easier than a tourniquet, and I'm just going to pull this until it's tight enough that the bleeding stops, just like the tourniquet, and that's the end of that. Right? So ratcheting belts can help. This one doesn't ratchet all the way down to here. But you can use this as well and tie this off with another tool.
All right, so Morty.
Yeah.
We've discussed the CAT Tourniquet, right? The Combat Application Tourniquet.
I should probably take that off
we've
of your leg.
discussed also an improvised tourniquet.
We did.
Right? So you have to use whatever's at your disposal to stop the bleed, all right? Because you can survive a gunshot wound, you can survive an injury, but if you don't stop the bleeding, you can die from blood loss. So a survivable injury can turn into an injury that causes death if you don't have the proper awareness and equipment to stop the bleed. We recommend that you get a CAT tourniquet, and we're going to put a link below and discuss where you can get these CAT tourniquets from. It's a really crucial piece of equipment. It's lightweight. It doesn't take up a lot of space. It can make the difference between life and death for yourself or for others. And if we've seen anything in the news lately, this is a lifesaver. Okay, so we've spent a significant amount of time now discussing bleeding, bleeding profusely, and what you can do to stop the bleed. A very important FYI is if you're going to take the time to get yourself a CAT tourniquet, I would also tell you to carry around gloves, all right? PPE, personal protective equipment. Blood carries all sorts of diseases, and you want to protect yourself before you help somebody else. So if you're going to jump in and provide life-saving techniques using a CAT tourniquet, always want to put on gloves before you interact with bodily fluids from another individual. So you can just wrap these together. I have mine staged with a rubber band, and I'll just wrap it together with the gloves. So when I deploy this, the tourniquet, it's getting deployed together with the gloves. I put the gloves on first, and then I'll deploy the tourniquet. And these tourniquets can be gotten from North American Rescue. We'll put links below to where you can get these tourniquets. They're relatively inexpensive to buy and well worth its weight in gold.
May. The month of May is National Stop the Bleed Month. I highly recommend that when you purchase one of these, it's very nice that you watched this video and you got this information from us. Take a Stop the Bleed course, www.stopthebleed.org. There are resources where you can actually do a good amount of the class online yourself. The entire didactic portion, I believe, is available now on there. And all you need to do is access the tourniquet and practice with it. So I highly recommend that. Now, you saw today the CAT tourniquet. Beware of other brands that do not come from North American Rescue. They probably will work, but the quality of the build is not the same. The windlass is constructed differently, and I find that the quality of this particular brand is unsurpassed.
Thank you very much for watching our video on the Combat Application Tourniquet. Please understand we are not giving medical advice, and we have no affiliation whatsoever with North American Rescue. They don't know us, we don't know them. We use their products because they work, and we rely on them to save lives. Again, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Stay safe and stay prepared.